I'm James Swanwick. Welcome to the Alcohol Free Lifestyle Podcast, where you learn to live a life of health, wealth, love, and happiness.
Hi, this is Sarah from the Alcohol Free Lifestyle Podcast. And this episode is about my journey with my mental health over the last 50 years. I didn't know at the time that I was growing up in an environment where my father in particular was really struggling with his own mental health. And what that had led to for him, particularly being a man in the 1960s, 1970s, where depression and anxiety weren't well spoken about, was dealing with his mental health challenges with alcohol. So I observed at a really young age that to feel better about how you were feeling, then alcohol was the option, potentially the only option. I was struggling with my mental health, I believe, from around the age of 20. I was at university and I found myself just constantly wanting to go and lie down and sleep. Well, my friends would be out and about at the gym and going to clubs and partying. On a regular basis, I would find myself withdrawing and hiding in my room, just losing myself in movies and never really wanting to get up and do anything. I didn't know that there was anything particularly wrong with me other than I didn't feel like I was like everybody else. There was something a little bit different. My time at university and then moving on from there, I would struggle with bouts of depression, primarily, not so much anxiety, but just really low moods, apathy, exhaustion, and a sense of what's the point? And after a very difficult breakup in my mid-20s, I completely shut down. It was physical. It was terrifying. I remember my sight just going completely awry, askew, and I felt completely shut down. And my father, I remember him picking me up from the job that I was in at the time, and he took me to my local doctor. And I remember so clearly the doctor drawing a diagram of these little holes in the brain. He was a very simple explanation, but what I remember from it was he said that these holes are where this chemical serotonin needs to go through these little holes for you to feel okay, and at the moment those holes are blocked. Well, it completely changed how I saw myself in that situation, because up until then, I'd always felt like depression was who I was, that I was just somebody that was a depressed person, and it didn't have any explanation. It was just part of my personality, if you like. But when it was explained in that way, it was so clear to me that this was something that was a physical problem. At least that was the connection that I made at the time, that this was not just about my personality. And the doctor explained to me that if I took some medication and I went to see a counsellor, this would unblock these blocked holes and I would start to feel better. So at that point, being a very curious person, I really dove into a lot of research around depression. I started taking the medication. I started to see a counsellor. And for the first time that I could remember, I had somebody that was listening to me. Somebody that was listening to me without looking away, without being distracted by things in the environment, without showing signs of confusion or fear around what I was sharing. And it was a really huge shift. for me in terms of how I started to see the rest of my life. The counselling was supported by the medication. And from a personal point of view, because I'm not a doctor or a psychiatrist or a psychologist, but from a personal perspective, the two worked really, really well together. I needed the medication to get the chemicals back into balance, and then I needed the support from a counselling point of view to work some things out so that I didn't keep repeating the same thought patterns that had potentially exacerbated my depression. I got so excited about discovering that I could be different, that I could change my mind, if you like. And so I took my medication, I did my counselling, and I read as much as I could about depression and mental health. And the work of Dan Gilbert was extremely impactful for me at the time, giving me lots of different tools and tricks that I could use to manage my mental health. But being, I guess, a high achiever and somebody that likes to get the job done, I ignored medical advice and I stopped taking the medication. And after a while, I stopped seeing the counsellor. I moved to Australia thinking that that might be the answer, which had been a bit of an MO for me. I'd always kind of picked my bags up and disappeared when I couldn't handle things. And in my first 3 or 4 years here in Australia, my mental health deteriorated quite dramatically. I think this was a combination of being away from what I knew, from my family, the pressure of trying to find my way in a country where there were quite a lot of restrictions around what I could do for a living, and drinking, because it was here that the alcohol really started to take hold. I discovered that despite my better judgment, that drinking was a way that I could at least manage some of my mental health challenges, or at least, should I say, avoid. So I got myself into the habit of drinking to escape from the uncomfortable feelings that I was experiencing. This wasn't an excessive habit at the time, but it certainly paved the way for my descent into alcohol use disorder as I got older. My mental health was very unstable in those first 3 or 4 years. And whilst I did seek counselling, I really survived, I think, kind of treading water during that time. So for 20 years, really, I struggled on and off with my mental health. I also, conversely, was fascinated by psychology, counselling, coaching, and really immersed myself in the study of those areas without ever having the confidence to actually do the work on other people, because I was so busy focused on myself. I suppose in a way I was healing myself through learning about all these different modalities and applying them to my own life. And whilst that was very, very helpful, and I think it carried me for quite a long time, there was still some underlying things that were happening, and I was still drinking. And at the age of 40, I lost my mother quite quickly. And through that grief and that stress and that anxiety, my drinking went up another level. I decided after my mum died that I would train to be a yoga instructor. I had loved my yoga practice. It had been very important in helping me maintain a stable mental state for a long time. And so, as per my usual MO, really dove into the yoga practice, but more importantly, the philosophy of yoga, which I found fascinating. But interestingly, still drinking. It was bizarre when I think back. I had not made any connection between alcohol and my mental health. I had written down in diaries for many years. The first time in 2002, I discovered a diary quite recently where I had written about 10 times, I must stop drinking, I must stop drinking. So I'd planted a seed quite early on, and I guess at the time really realised that alcohol was not helping. However, I didn't know what else to do. I felt like I was doing all the things. I was learning all the right stuff. I was practicing yoga on a very regular basis. I was learning about philosophy and all these things. All the ingredients were there, but it was a bit of a mix and a soup. And I hadn't yet really made that crucial connection.
Hi, this is James Swanwick, and we're taking applications for our 90-day and 365-day stop drinking programs. Clients are mostly executives, entrepreneurs, and investors who have tried unsuccessfully and repeatedly to stop drinking, but remain stuck in a frustrating cycle of stop, start, stop, start. Our programs are not AA, which has a reported 7% success rate. Our programs are not rehab, which has a reported 6% success rate. Our 90-day and 1-year programs involve a safe, fun, virtual community of high achievers with a process that boasts a scientifically proven 98% success rate of clients reaching at least 90 consecutive days alcohol-free. That's according to the University of Washington. We use the latest neuroscience and personal development processes to help rewire clients' brains around alcohol and minimize its importance in their lives. We will show you how to powerfully socialize with friends, family, and colleagues, what to say and how to say it so people don't mistakenly think you're an alcoholic or have a problem, and how to eliminate the temptation of returning to constant drinking so you break the stop-start cycle. To ensure client success, Project 90 can only accept 24 new clients each month. Some of those happy clients include John Keltner from California, who said, "I've lost 10 pounds." Susie Vaughan, a real estate broker in Tennessee, who said, "I've generated 20% more leads." Jessica Gaines from Kentucky, who says, "I've now got joy, focus, presence, and clarity." And Joe Worley from Michigan, who says, "My wife has the real Joe back." If you're an executive, entrepreneur, investor, real estate professional, attorney, doctor, and you're sick of the stop-start cycle and the damaging effects alcohol has on your health, happiness, and family, and you're ready to regain confidence, become more present with your spouse and children, reduce stress, anxiety, and irritability, sleep better, increase focus and productivity, and feel better quickly, you're invited to apply to become one of our 24 monthly Project 90 clients. Applicants can apply for an introductory interview by visiting alcoholfreelifestyle.com/project90. There's also a link in this episode's show notes. That's alcoholfreelifestyle.com/project90. Application interviews are limited and are conducted on a first-come, first-served basis. Okay, let's get back to the show.
Between the fact that alcohol and mental health are inextricably linked, and I wasn't prepared to address that. I think because alcohol was the primary source of relief at the time. And being younger, the downsides were not as evident as they became later on in my life. So at the age of 41, 42, recovering from the loss of my mother, and started to move into what I now know is perimenopause, where the hormones go completely awry and the alcohol is differently metabolized. The anxiety and depression became worse. I couldn't discern between the grief and the anxiety and the depression and the perimenopause. And it got so bad that I went to my GP again, who put me on a low dose of an antidepressant, which worked. However, what I realized now was that taking an antidepressant and drinking alcohol was potentially the end for me in relation to my relationship with alcohol. Because what the antidepressants did were enable me to keep drinking. Prior to taking these antidepressants, my hangovers, my anxiety, and the negative effects of my drinking were extremely obvious, to the point where I was desperate to find a solution, but I was not prepared to give up drinking. When I started taking the antidepressants, the hangovers and the depression and the aftermath of my drinking was dramatically reduced, which of course led me to take my time in regards to making the decision to quit. I realised quite quickly that my relationship to alcohol was supported by the antidepressants, that my drinking was enabled and made less obvious. The downsides were made less obvious because I was taking this medication. And I remember at the time thinking that was quite a good thing because, again, I was not ready to stop drinking. At about the age of 45, my father was diagnosed with a very aggressive cancer. At this point, my drinking I was tipping over from the moderate use that we generally accept in Australia as quite excessive use, but it wasn't ruling my life, or at least it didn't feel like it was. But once my dad got sick, I went to my very reliable coping mechanism of over drinking. And for 3 months, I completely surrendered to alcohol use as a way of getting through each and every day. There was a very quick descent into drinking practically daily, not daily, but almost daily, to starting to obsess about when I could drink, where I could drink, how much I could drink, to looking for any excuse to drink, to hiding the fact that I was drinking. And I guess because I was quite a professional in my drinking career, I was very good at not drinking that much around people, being very moderate in social situations. But when I was alone, that was when I gave in to my urges, my cravings, and ultimately my desire not to feel anything. And needless to say, the impact that this started to have on my mental health was, I think, only really realised for myself way after I stopped drinking. The descent into substance use disorder, as I've mentioned, was rapid. And I wasn't equipped to handle it because I was in the middle of this soup, this casserole of grief and anxiety and stress and travel and family. And it was horrific thinking back to it. And I'm not surprised that I used my coping mechanism, something that had been working for a long time, which was drinking. However, I knew it wasn't sustainable. I knew that if I didn't look after my mental health once and for all, that I would waste the rest of my life trying to manage it in a very ineffective and destructive way. And alcohol had to go. I had been trying to manage my mental health with this highly toxic and addictive substance for 20 odd years. And so I made the decision the day that my father passed away. I was lucky enough to be with him, but I made the decision that it had to stop. Enough. And so that was how I finally dealt with my mental health. I didn't cure it. It wasn't like I stopped drinking and suddenly my mental health was on track. But what did happen was that once I'd removed the alcohol, I had the space, the clarity, and the desire, based on my realization that fundamentally life is finite and at some point it's going to end, that my mental health became my number one priority. I removed alcohol, and for the last 4 years since I quit alcohol, I have had a dogged determination and fascination in what I need to do in order to have extraordinary mental health. I prioritize it over physical health. I prioritize it over my family. I prioritize it over my career. I prioritize it over finances, because when my mental health is stable, my life is joyous. My life is peaceful. I have no anxiety. I rarely feel low, and it has been the most extraordinary experience discovering that my mental health challenges have probably been some of the greatest gifts that I've been given in my life, because what it has led me to is a very deep connection with myself and a very exciting and rewarding career. One of the things that really struck me in this whole experience is how much of my time I was reaching outside of myself to support my inner world. The drugs, the alcohol, the relationships, the travel, the career, the money, the friendships, the social life, all of these things that I used as all kinds of addictions in a way to distract myself from what was really going on inside. So how did I finally conquer my mental health challenges at the age of 50? It was not a light bulb moment. It was not a quick fix, but it was a determination to prioritize my mental health above everything else. The primary thing that I did that I feel had the most impact was to remove alcohol. And everything has evolved and unfolded from there. So I think that's the story. That's my experience. And so my recommendations for anyone that's listening that may relate to my story or be struggling with mental health is to find support from somebody that you relate to, somebody that you trust, and keep an open mind. Because sometimes I do believe medication can be really helpful. However, I don't see it as the only thing. I think medication and counselling or coaching is a pair, comes as a pair, and gives you the best chance, I believe, of resolving the challenges at the root cause, and ultimately allowing you to free yourself from these destructive patterns and behaviours that are holding you back in life.
Thank you so much for listening. For more content like this, you can check out our YouTube channel at alcoholfreelifestyle.com/YouTube. You can follow me and send me a direct message on Instagram and TikTok at James Swanwick. And you can see the results of our scientific study at alcoholfreelifestyle.com/study. If you'd like to apply to become a Stop Drinking client, you can visit alcoholfreelifestyle.com/project90. I wrote a book called The 30-Day No Alcohol Challenge, which you can find on Amazon. And you can always email me directly at james@alcoholfreelifestyle.com. If you're a regular listener of the show, would you please do me a big favor and give the show a rating and a review? It helps us get more listeners, and you'll be potentially helping someone else out there who's struggling with alcohol to find us, to listen to us and get support. Thanks so much for listening. We'll catch you on the next one.